Great. So I'd like to call to order the board meeting of the Elliott State Research Forest for March 11th, 2026. Welcome to all of you here. First, we're just going to go through the roll call of the board just to confirm that we do have a quorum, which I believe we do. So I will start off with myself. I'm Jennifer Allen, board member from Portland, and maybe I'll just go through and call on folks. Peter.
Good morning, Peter Hayes, board member from Portland. I'm going to apologize ahead of time. I have to be two places at once, so if I come and go, it's not out of any lack of enthusiasm.
Got it. Thanks, Peter. Thanks for being here. Peyton.
Good morning, everyone. Peyton Smith, board member with Southport Lumber in Coos Bay.
Mike Wilson.
Good morning, Mike Wilson here.
Keith.
I'm here from my dining room.
Haley.
Haley Lutz, board member with Coos Watershed Association in Coos Bay.
And who have I forgotten? I don't have everything in front of me here. Ken.
Ken Carloni on the beautiful North Umpqua River.
Great. Okay. I think we're good then. Did I miss anybody? I probably did. All right then. So we'll turn it over to the forest manager for opening remarks.
Well, good morning, everyone. Darren Gooding, the forest manager for the Elliott State Research Forest. Just want to welcome everyone, members of the board, members of the DSL staff and the Elliott staff, and other visitors from the public and other visitors we have with us. I just want to have a few comments I want to make this morning. Just recognizing once again what a difference a year makes. As most of you know, especially since our last board meeting, we've advertised the first timber sale in the Elliott State Research Forest. So quite a milestone, an accomplishment, and just the beginning of the ramp up of our forest operations here on the Elliott.
I'm going to interrupt Darren and go woo woo for the first timber sale. So for all of us.
Thanks, Keith. We're also obviously making project. We have a lot of other projects in the works that we're making progress on as well, which you're going to hear about some of those updates from staff later on here in the meeting as well. So I won't steal all the thunder on those. But I'd like to take a moment to actually publicly recognize my staff here on the Elliott for all their hard work and let them know that their efforts are sincerely appreciated, and a lot is being asked of them, and they're been up to the challenge and working hard, and I really appreciate it. One other thing I wanted to just mention is really appreciate that we've been continuing to build and improve our processes and relationship with working together with the board and with our staff here on the Elliott. Well, of course, while we still got some growing pains, we still have some bumps in the roads once in a while, which is to be expected. But I think we've been on a great path, and we've come a long way in this last year about how we, as staff and board, interact and work together, and looking for and got some process to place to kind of connect, create those connection and touch points and kind of schedule some things out so that we're aware of what's coming up ahead of us and to make the best use of our interactions. So I just wanted to call that out as well, that's been great to see progress on that, and we'll continue to get better at that as we go forward. So with that, I'll keep my comments short here. So I'll pass it back to Jennifer.
Great. Thanks so much, Darren. All right, so the next step here is to review and approve the agenda. So I hope you've all had a chance to look over it. Are there any, I don't think we need to adjust any timing today, Emma, based on our run through of this. So if it all looks okay, I think this one we will just do sort of by consensus. Does anybody have any comments or things they need reflected in terms of the agenda today? All right, then I think we can move that forward. And the next order of business is approval of previous meeting minutes, which were also in the packet. So if you've had a chance to review those, hopefully, and if anyone has any corrections or changes, but otherwise we will entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Move to approve.
I second. This is Peter.
All right, Ken moved to approve and Peter seconded. Any further discussion or any changes? All right, all those in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sing out. All right, great. We're moving on to, I believe, public comment. Per our oversight structure, the board and Department of State Lands invite public comment opportunities at each board meeting. And for those of you online who wish to provide comment, we're going to ask you to please use the raise hand feature, and you'll be called on in the order in which your virtual hands are raised. And when it is your turn to speak, we'll call on you to begin speaking. And we please ask you to say your name, where you're joining us from, and any affiliation that you would like to share that you're representing, and to please keep your comments to 3 minutes. And be respectful of each other and agency representatives, of course. And we will be keeping track of your time. So with that, I'm going to see if we have anyone signed up for public comment, just looking for raised hands. And Emma, help me if I don't see a raised hand.
I'm not seeing any raised hands, but Fergus, it looks like you're off mute.
I am.
Okay, you're a bit
Hey.
quiet.
Okay,
Oh.
Fergus, if you'd like to offer some public comment, just introduce yourself and speak up a little bit. It's a little hard to hear you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Fergus McLean. I'm a retired forester. Family has property across the river from the Elliott. I just wanted to let you guys know I submitted some written comments, so hopefully they'll find their way to you. And I want to thank Emma in particular for helping me get online. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Fergus. Anyone else? Any other public comment? Raised hands? All right. Unless I'm overlooking one, I think that we are good with public comment. Okay, then we were going to turn it now to updates and announcements, and we have updates on a number of different topics here. We're going to be starting off with an update on forest operations from Caitlin, so I will turn it over to you, Caitlin.
Good morning. Nice to see you all again. I'll begin with some forest operations updates. We currently have the Schofield timber sale advertised on our website. It's a 268-acre restoration variable density thin. We had the pre-bid on Monday. 3 prospective bidders showed up to that. It was not mandatory. We've gotten another interest call as well. And from that meeting, it was all pretty standard, no big questions, and they felt like it was pretty standard. So that was some good feedback. The sealed bid will be opened on March 30th at 12:05 p.m. for that sale. Our layout contractors are ahead of schedule and doing a great job out there. They've finished layout on Cougar Prairie, Rob Bend, and Knife Mill. They've also actually completed the individual tree mark in Cougar Prairie as well. They are beginning to cruise Knife Mill sale. And thank you all for your feedback so far on the BOP 2729. We'll be addressing more BOP planning at the next board meeting. That's all I have for you this morning.
Great, Caitlin, thanks so much. All right, any questions for Caitlin or comments or follow-up on her overview here of forest operations?
Yeah, Jennifer, I'm searching
Yep.
for my raise hand feature.
Okay,
I
Keith,
didn't
go
see it. Yeah, thanks. Hey, Caitlin, I know that I believe that in this first round of timber sales, those are all with 3-year contracts, correct?
So this first one is a 3-year contract. The second one will be 2. The third one may be a 2-year.
Okay, perfect. That's all. That's what I was hoping where we were heading with some of those. So I just wanted to double check on it. Thanks.
Haley.
Caitlin, are there maps of the location of Cougar Prairie, Robin, and Knife Mill on the website or somewhere publicly available?
There is also Schofield has maps attached to it on our website in the bid package. The rest are not publicly available
Okay,
currently.
thanks.
The locations though are on that map that you sent out earlier, Caitlin, though, right? The whole spread of the Elliott there. So you can.
Yes, thanks, Ken. I think Haley's getting at that's available to you, but not to the rest of the public currently.
Peter.
Caitlin, I just want to say you put a ton of work into making this happen, you and the whole team. And I think a lot of us know that the devil is in the details. And it's really remarkable what you've achieved of pulling these pieces together and finding the contracts and getting them out. So I'm super grateful for what you've done and impressed by all you've pulled off. So thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Luckily, we had some people put together a great plan before I got here as well.
Any other comments, questions, follow-up for Caitlin? I'll just second what Peter said for sure.
Thanks, Jen.
Okay, great. Well, thanks again, Caitlin. And again, a lot of hard work there. And thanks so much for all of that and for updating us on where we're at. All right, I think we're on to, oh yeah. So then, did you want to talk through this a little bit too? Just the timeline?
Yeah,
Operations
I'm
plan?
just gonna give
Oh.
a high-level overview
Okay.
of our BOP timeline.
Okay, great.
For
Thanks,
the
Emma.
board. Yeah. So this is the timeline for BOP development as outlined in section 6.1 of our FMP. So we're right on schedule. We've started drafting the plan and beginning our internal meetings. We're hoping to have our first draft of initial sections by the end of June 2026. We'll then take the summer to do our internal review and refining. You should see the first draft of the BOP right around October 2026 when it goes out for public review. You'll have the month of February to do your tailored board review after the public sees it. We'll then take it back and revise with final approval expected in April 2027. So our plan here is to build out this timeline with both community engagement and board engagement, and we will return in our May meeting with a more detailed schedule so you can expect what you will see for each board meeting as it relates to the BOP. And I'll leave it at that if anyone has any questions or if Darren wants to jump in and add anything.
Thanks, Emma. Any questions on this? Once again, thanks so much for how upstream you guys are being about engaging us as we think about this. So thanks. All right. HCP, well, welcome, Amy. I can't hear you, Amy. Can other people hear her? Okay. Can't hear you.
Unmuting. No luck. Still no luck?
No, there you go.
No, there you go.
There you go.
Okay. Huh. Strange. I muted and unmuted and it seemed to work. Anyhow, nice to see the board and some other folks here at our meeting. Along with forest operations, we are moving forward with HCP commitments, spotted owl surveys across the entirety of the Elliott started this month, and the contractors should be, if they're not out there already, they should be starting, I think, tomorrow, kind of from the north part of the forest, moving west to east and south. So they're going to be pretty much everywhere out there. If anyone's out on the forest, you'll likely run into them. In addition to that, the HCP annual report was submitted to the services, and just last week I got comments back from NOAA incorporating those comments, and then we'll submit the final version, and then that can go to the board and to the public as well. Other HCP commitments, we're in the beginning processes of barn owl management. We have identified cooperators and just in the initial stages of developing that plan. Some really exciting news was we were awarded a grant from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. It actually goes through Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, but it is for our HCP amendment. Specifically, if the Northwest Pond Turtle or Western Ridge mussels get listed, we want to get ahead of that. So the grant provides us funds to develop survey plans, survey, and update our HCP if necessary. And that's about it for HCP implementation. I'm happy to take any questions from the board.
Thanks, Amy.
Okay.
Questions or follow-up from the board?
Oops, I raised my hand here.
Okay.
Well, anyway, I'll do that next time. The barred owl management plan, that will involve lethal removal, I assume?
Yes, it will.
Okay, great. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Just giving folks time to ponder if they have any questions for you on this. Don't see any other hands or people coming off mute. Good. Well, thanks, Amy, for, again, all the work moving this forward and for the update today. So yeah, thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
All right. Research and monitoring. Ryan, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Ryan Bombush, Research Coordinator here at the Elliott State Research Forest. So we have some things that have been moving along since the last board meeting. We're making progress on our research model and design. We're taking initial steps to organize work groups to get input on how we structure our overall research model, the processes we put in place for managing and approving research, and general approaches to go about doing this in a collaborative effort. And we'll be bringing those suggestions to the board. Our baseline sensor network, the baseline monitoring, the first pair of sensors got deployed in the Fish Creek drainage. I'll have some photos on those coming up on the next slide. And we're going to be working with the biennial operations plan for 27-29 to coordinate future deployment of the rest of the sensor network. So the first two sensors out there are just pilot sensors, proving that the systems are working and communicating, and we can get data streaming back. So far, everything's looking good in that regard. And then we'll be working internally to make sure sensors get deployed in coordination with near-term timber harvests, and then working with other collaborators and partners and stakeholders to determine ideal places for deployment and any other additional equipment or sensors we want to incorporate into this network. The riparian corridor restoration study through OSU, they came down a couple times to scout out potential sites for corridor restoration. Right now, they're funded for pre-treatment data collection. So they're going in right now, looking at suitability of streams for restoration, as well as access into those streams so that they can actually get the restoration work implemented. And then the Marble Merlet Edge study, which we funded, they organized a co-production meeting with ODF, ODFW, Bureau of Land Management, U.S. Forest Service, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to get input from those organizations, people who work with murrelet research and management, to better direct the study that's going to be going on in the Elliott to ensure that it's of best use to management for marbled murrelets rather than just solely being done by OSU. So the baseline sensor network, I mentioned they're installing sensor nodes at the top and bottom of drainages. So this was the top of Fish Creek. They're all solar powered. One of the things they're looking for is ensuring that the energy being produced by the panels is enough, more than enough, to cover the equipment that is recording data and then transmitting it back. And so far, everything has looked good in that regard for that project. Next photo. This is their communication antenna to communicate down with the sensor at the bottom of the drainage. And then this, the top of the drainage is going to be what connects back to the broader cellular network so that we can see the data eventually. All their signals looked super strong when they were out there. Everything looked promising in that regard. And then this is just an image of their battery backups and their essentially computer shed. It's essentially a Pelican case that they run all their equipment in. Everything seemed to be working there. Everything was staying dry and functioning properly.
Keith, do you have a question about that?
Yes, I do. I just wondered if I'm not seeing any of the images that Ryan is referring to. Is anybody?
Yeah.
Everybody else sees them?
You can see them.
Yep.
Okay, I'll have to figure that one out.
Okay, sorry about that, Keith.
Can you see the slide at all? Installation of baseline sensor network?
Nope, I'm not seeing anything.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll figure it out and go.
Okay.
You can make sure that you have Emma Sloan's screen tab up at the top selected and not the meeting one.
Okay. All right. And then moving on to the bottom of the drainage. So this is down along Fish Creek. It's just over their shoulders right now. So they're installing soil moisture probes. Self-explanatory to measure soil moisture out there. Next photo. This is an image of their meteorological station, weather station, recording precipitation, wind speed, wind direction, temperature. And it also collects some pretty interesting metrics like vapor pressure deficit that Caitlin is really interested in because it's really intimately linked with stress, especially that Douglas firs experience, but associated with warming climates and climate change. And then this one, I don't know, this is the one that gets me most excited. It's a band dendrometer. And you see that metal tape running around the tree. And then the device it can tell us real-time growth of the tree, but it's so sensitive that it will actually tell us when the trees expand and contract with water uptake due to photosynthesis in the tree. So I'm really interested in seeing those data coming out and working with some partners to analyze those data. So that's the baseline sensor network, and the next couple of photos are from working with the Riparian Corridor Restoration Project. And we're going out, like I said, to make sure that the access was available to sites from a desktop review that they conducted. So this is Howell Creek in the south end of the Elliott, and this is a good example of what they're trying to restore. So that cut bank right there just shoots the water straight down the stream, and it's essentially the the water in the stream is disconnected from the broader riparian corridor with the riparian vegetation and trees and shrubs up above that cut bank. So what they're aiming to do is put a bunch of wood into the stream, not just so that structure gets put into the stream for salmonids, but also so that that water gets pushed back out and is reconnected to the broader riparian corridor to support riparian vegetation communities. And the next photo. And this was on Deer Creek. This was the first site I checked out with them, with Dana Warren and Alex Foote. And Dana was just super excited to see some of the restoration work on Deer Creek that I believe Kuzwa conducted in the early 2000s. And he was showing me this particular picture of just like, this is what they're hoping to get to, where you see that stream rather than being buried down a cut bank is right next to the riparian corridor, and you get a lot of water coming down that stream, and that water is just going to push out beyond the stream bed there. So they were really excited about that. That day, access was questionable whether they could work with this site, but I went and checked out a different access point for them a couple weeks later, and it looks like we might be able to work with that site. So that is it for the slideshow. Does anybody have any questions for the research? Haley?
Ryan, can you remind me if we fully funded these research projects?
The riparian corridor restoration and the marbled Merlet edge study, we fully funded. And the riparian corridor edge restoration, we funded the pre-treatment data collection aspect of it. I believe they'll still need a secure funding for the actual restoration work. And then the baseline monitoring was funded externally to OSU in 2023. And they're using that funding to install the baseline network.
Awesome. Yeah, I was remembering when these researchers presented, they were all going after additional funding to support their research. And I was wondering if there had any update on additional resources being secured to continue those projects.
I haven't heard from them, but I will, next time I check in with them, I can ask them.
Awesome. And second question, you presented that that you're working on the research structure, which was a big piece that the board was really interested in. We discussed at our retreat and then in our board meetings since, and articulated a desire to have a little bit more specificity around process and timeline for when that decision might come to the board to figure out that structure piece. And I didn't see a ton of detail on that today. So I was just wondering, I think that it's because that's such a core part of the forest, and especially since there's already active harvest operations are going to be going on. Just wondering if you had, when the board might be able to see some increased specificity on how that is moving forward.
Yes, we went over a detailed work plan between Darren, Emma, and I. I think we just need to attach some timeline dates to that, and we should be able to pass that along to the board.
Okay. Last follow-up question. You mentioned as part of that process that you guys are putting together work groups to help determine that research structure. Can you speak a little bit to the types of expertise and individuals you're recruiting on that, and if you anticipate there will be any board interaction at that stage in the process?
So there is board interaction right now. We're working with Jennifer Allen on developing those work groups. We're kind of working it out in stages. When we're going to be touching base with OSU as a single work group, given their past history and insight they can provide into future direction of the research forest. After that, we are planning work groups with specifically managers working on other research forests or experimental forests out there that can comment on kind of the day-to-day business and structures in place for operating those, as well as researchers who do a substantial amount of research on these forests so that they can comment from their perspective of what works well in engaging with those forests.
Awesome, thanks. I had one additional question, but Peter's hand is up, so I don't want to
Okay.
take your space
Yeah.
here. So if there's time, I'll.
Okay. Peter?
Yeah, Ryan, this is terrific. Thank you. It's impressive to see how it's gone. I have two questions. One is with the sensor network, can you tell us what are all the things being measured? I heard soil moisture, weather, and then the other piece of that one is it the idea that this is like a framework that you could add other types of sensors on over time, or is it like build it and it's done and that's how it's going to work? So
No,
what's the future?
Definitely the former. They are very interested in getting feedback on what other kinds of sensors could be incorporated. That's, like I said, the Pelican case, housing, the waterproof housing has plenty of other space to incorporate other sensors patched into it. The fact that the solar panels are producing more than enough energy, there's no problem in adding other sensors in there. The only considerations are like maintaining it such that not installing equipment that's going to be such a big power draw on it, then the solar panels aren't going to be able to keep up with that. That's our one really big limitation. I think they're also planning acoustic recording units, which will be really useful for bird communities, attaching camera traps to them. Along with the band andrometer, something else not pictured. I don't think they had deployed one of those when I went out with them. Is a sap flow meter, as it states, it measures sap flow through trees, and I believe that's all the equipment that they're. Caitlin added temperature, humidity as part of the meteorological stations.
Great. And my second question follows up on something Ken asked at the last meeting. Is there any pre-logging monitoring going on in the sites that will be in these first timber sales? So it would give the chance to do before and after comparisons. And my guess is that's a tough thing to do, but it seems worth checking on.
It is very much worth checking on, but no, we're not doing that right now. The plan as part of the for the next BOP is to ensure that we can get sensors deployed in coordination with near-term harvests so that we can collect multiple years, ideally 5 years of pre-treatment data. The catch there is if we want to collect 5 years of pre-treatment data, they're going to have to be timber harvests to keep the forest running prior to that. We do have biodiversity monitoring data, or not monitoring, biodiversity baseline data that was collected by OSU in 2022 and 2023. I need to go back and check and see if what the overlap is there between the planned harvests and what we have.
Great, thank you.
Ken, and then Mike Wilson. Oh,
yeah. To follow up on Peter's comment and my previous comment, I understand when you're monitoring for species or for plant responses or something like that, you need several years of baseline data, but for soil carbon, you can you can collect that right now.
Okay.
And then look at it over time in that 5 years after the harvest process. So I think because carbon, as we'll see, later on, we'll get a more of an update on the carbon story here on the forest. That I think there are lots of studies that show that soil carbon is impacted the more of the overstory you remove. So that wouldn't take a lot of that wouldn't take any pre-monitoring. It would just take
Okay.
sampling. So we can continue this discussion offline.
Yeah, I would absolutely love to. Any data we can collect ahead of time. And with the timber sales that are in our current biennial operations plan, those aren't going to be like operations aren't going to be happening instantly. So we do have some leeway in getting the funding to go out or finding the time to collect samples out there and then secure funding for analysis later.
Yeah, and I'd be glad to help on that. We can
I'd love to
have more of a conversation. Yeah.
Yep. Great. Thanks.
Mike.
Yeah, thank you. Haley had a couple good questions. Thanks for clarifying on the financing, the funding of the different projects. I was curious about that and the work groups. Just with the variety of different efforts and studies that are going on there, is anybody making use of the facilities there at Shutter Creek, or they coordinating anything?
Not right
making
now.
use of that?
No. Darren could probably comment more on that if you want more information on Shutter Creek development and use.
Well, I think Mike's question was if anyone was making use of it right now, no, we don't. No one's been. We haven't been. No one's been using it as a temporary camp outside or anything at this point. No, Mike.
Yeah, that was
basically
basically with the research, storing equipment or office space or anything like that. But yeah, okay.
Not yet. I've made that offer to our current research collaborators right now.
All right. Yeah, I'm glad to hear you made the offer. Thank you.
Yeah, Haley. Yep.
One last quick question. We talked about it a few times, I think maybe the last board meeting too, the power analysis for the triad design being an essential kind of step and action in the assessing of the research model. Is that something that's been completed, or is there a timeline or next steps on that piece?
Not completed. Preliminary data has been provided to the statistician at OSU, Dusty Gannon. We're waiting on the finalized allocation layer from farm to pass on to them so that they don't have to reverse engineer what our current allocations are from the spatial data. But they have something to start kind of framing the analysis, the code around. And we're working on developing a work plan and timeline and budget with them.
Great. Haley, was that one of the other questions you had? Did you have anything else?
That was my last question. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks.
Good questions. Good questions from everyone. Any others? Ryan. No, thanks for the update and the overview, Ryan, and thanks for the pictures. It always is great and helpful and exciting to see people.
Yep. We're studying a forest, not just an idea. Yep.
Yeah, nicely done. Thank you so much. Alrighty. I think we're moving on to partnerships. Yeah. Take it away, Emma.
Okay, I just wanted to provide some clarification on language that we've been using. So, as you all know, DSL initiated consultation with the 5 Western Oregon tribes in November of 2025. And we've been communicating that we will share with you decision-based information with the board as it arises. And what we mean here is just key developments from those consultation conversations that represent formal decisions or shifts in engagement, such as whether a tribe will join the Elliott board, sign different types of agreements, participate in projects, or may opt out entirely. So this will obviously be different for each tribe that we've engaged in consultation with, and we will share with the board when it's appropriate. And excited to say that we anticipate having decision-based information ready to share with you as early as the May board meeting. I don't want to promise that, so May would be our earliest target. but July is also a possibility. So if anyone has any additional clarification needed here, let me know. Awesome.
Great. Thanks, Emma. Thanks for providing that. That's very helpful. All right, recreation and education, Darren.
Yeah, so the intent of this today was just to bring this topic back up because it's time to kind of get in kickoff mode for recreation and education planning. So I've been working on a kind of an initiation plan, or could call it plan for the plan, since we're kind of intending to have, there'll be separate plans, a recreation and education plan. Just for everybody's reference, just reminding that some of the background on this subject is in section 3.2 of the FMP. So if anyone wants to go take a look at those sections again for a refresher, this is one of the areas called out in the oversight structure with the board that the intent is to make a recommendation around the recreation education plan. So my plan here today was just kind of get this back on the radar. And also kind of tee this up for probably my hope would be to have a deeper discussion on this at the May meeting as more of a discussion item to kind of look at what our next steps will be here. As I said, I've kind of sketched out an initiation plan for our next steps. I'm going to want to share that a little bit here internally, just a little bit, and then I'll want to share that out with the board to take a look at get some feedback, hopefully between now and the next meeting to get a jump on that. And so that document that I put together pulls some of the direction from what we had in the FMP around doing this planning effort, but also that you may recall that the FMP had called out utilizing the visitor use management framework as kind of the baseline of how the framework that we would use for the planning process, even though it's more based around for recreation, there's some aspects of it, the processes could lend itself to also kind of helping to frame up the education plan as well. So this initiation plan I have kind of pulls together that information, the direction from the plan, and then also from the details around the steps that are used in the visitor use management framework planning process. So it just kind of lays that out. Of course, one of the things up front would be, and just a reminder too, that we had allocated $150,000 out of the 25-27 budget to begin the recreation and education planning. So the intent being that although this is going to be one of the things that I'll probably lead on, obviously we're going to be looking at a contractor to do most of the bulk of the work. And so developing an RFP for that work would be part of the early steps to get things started here too. So this was just meant to be just kind of get this back on the radar, get it into the queue of the steps that we're following with the board to do update, kind of introduce the topic again, and then do intend to have a deeper presentation and opportunity for discussion at the next board meeting, with sharing some information in between the next one. But what I wanted to do is, by teeing that up a little bit, is just kind of what your kind of gauge board members' interests. If there's, I know you'll all be involved, but if there's any of subset, or if there's one or two of you or so that really have a keen interest in this topic that would like to potentially dig into it a bit more with me on some, as we're trying to get things lined up, figure out exactly next steps, I'd be love to hear that. You don't have to volunteer now. If you want to reach out to me individually later, that's perfectly fine. So, oh, I got a message from Keith. Keith threw his name in the hat. So I got Keith at least already. And the rest of you can just, like I said, let me know if that's one that you really like to dig in a bit more. I would appreciate the extra help on that. And so that's pretty much it for that. Like I said, more to come. Definitely much more of a deeper dive plan. My intent would be to do it at the next meeting in May. So I don't know if anybody's got any questions at this point, but
You can put me on the list too, Darren, for education.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you. I couldn't find the hand raise function. Darren, I would be very interested in raising my hand for this. Also, just curious, have you guys, I mean, it sounds like we're still pretty early in the planning, but have you been reaching out yet to our local school districts or, Travel Oregon, mountain biking, hunting clubs?
Have not made it started doing that. We have some of that info, kind of the anecdotal, some of that information was kind of gathered, but I have not made that'll be actually part of the process as we start to get because data collection is going to be a big piece of this. Just kind of getting the baseline about knowledge about recreation and the education to start off with, and so reaching out to all those groups that have interest or may have interest will be part of that process. So.
Great, thank you.
But I hadn't done it yet. So,
Ken.
Yeah, and I had contacted some folks on the forest. I also am on the board of Umpqua Watersheds Conservation Organization here in Douglas County and the area, and we're going to be we are developing the field component of OSU Extension's Oregon Naturalist program, and we're planning a visit to the Elliott sometime in August. And I know I need to cycle back with Ryan and other folks so that our sort of forest management piece we hope to be able to do on the Elliott. So maybe we can have a little bit of a pilot project here to get us started.
Nice.
Keith.
Yeah, Darren, and this might have come up. I guess it comes up in following the research component that Ryan spoke about. And this is a way I think kind of an initial step in developing some recreational opportunities or some people who are focused on recreation in the forest and maybe some educational link as well or directly. Where we have researchers who would not mind if they're working in riparian habitat right now, I think it would be it probably is an easy reach out to you have Coos Bay and North Bend, Marshfield North Bend, you have Reedsport and Elkton, all of them border the Elliott or thereabouts, and reaching out to science classes there. I'm sure there's some natural science classes or biology classes that would be interested in that sort of observation of being in the forest while they're doing some of the research. And I'd be glad to help coordinate or reach out to school districts if staff feels that's a fit.
That sounds like something to definitely explore, Keith.
Great. Thanks. All right. Definitely lots of interest, Darren. So I think you got some good participation there. And thank you also for raising this, bringing it back onto the radar, as you say, and for the work to plan to take it forward. So it sounds good. Yeah.
Thanks.
Anything else on that one? All right. So we had a break here in case people wanted to take a formal break. Oh, Mike, go for it, Mike.
Yeah, you have a moment here before a break. I know Emma was the previous stepping back just on our agenda. Giving us an update on some of the decision process for involving tribes. But like you're talking about with the education, there's a lot of different groups out there, and I'm assuming there's efforts and there's looks for partnerships with with other entities out there, be it some of our neighbors. I think I heard one time on one of the land board or the Ways and Means talking about working with some of the in the fire reduction efforts with neighbors, BLM and Forest Service, and then you have watershed councils and that of course schools around us. But I think there's a world of opportunities out there for partnerships, and I saw that on the agenda, and I was thinking it was going to be quite a bit broader. And at some point, I don't want to take time now, and I know we have the break, but at some point I'd be interested to hear in just kind of our efforts and outreach and partnerships and what we're doing in that regard. Just wanted to mention it for the future.
I see Peter's hand, and also this was a break if needed. So I think it's important to take the time if people do have comments like that. And so thanks for bringing that up, Mike. And we could even circle back. And Peter, I see your hand up.
I'll be super quick. building on what Mike just said, I'm a real fan of thinking about how tribes will be involved, particularly on the education and use side. And, the lesson learned of with tribal involvement, which others like Mike know so much more than I do, is involving people from the earliest stages as opposed to coming up with a plan and then saying, well, how do you like this plan? So I'm sure this is on your list already, but it seems like an ideal place and maybe tied with a government to government consultation is to say, here's an immediate opportunity where tribes have things to offer, even though their resources or time might be limited. But I hope that's just on the list. And I'm sure it is, but I just wanted to underscore it. And thanks, Mike.
So any just follow up to Mike or Peter's comment there? From anybody on any front? And do people want to take a break? We have a fairly busy next half of this, so we could take a 5-minute break. How about that? Would that be okay? Let's take 5. So I have 10:52. So try to get back here before 11, and we'll get started a few minutes before 11, ideally, to get us back on. Keep us on track and maybe even get us going a little earlier than scheduled. Is that okay, Emma? Okay, so 5 minutes. See you back shortly. Okay. All right. Well, so Emma, thanks for building in that break. That's always a good thing. And we're going to turn now to some discussion items today. The first we'll deal with carbon, then we'll turn to some staff and board work planning, finally some board perspectives and skills and budget and financial planning. And we're going to start off with the climate and carbon strategy.
I'm going to pass it over to Danny Norlander with ODF, who's been kind enough to join us. Actually, Danny, I actually think I have a couple of slides before you. Excuse me. And then I'll pass it off to you. Okay. So today is the first installment of our carbon learning plan. So you've been hearing from us asking what do you want to learn about the Elliott Carbon Project and carbon projects in general. So for the next year or so, we'll be bringing discussion items related to the Elliott's Carbon Project to you. And thank you to those who followed up with information that you'd like to learn about. So we're going to begin today with some history and background on the carbon and climate policy in Oregon more broadly. We're going to hear from Danny from ODF, who's going to talk us through state level goals around carbon and climate and where he sees the Elliott Carbon Project fitting into those goals. I'll then take us through our current context and where the Elliott fits within COTEC's recent resilience executive orders. And then we'll wrap up today with our current thinking around the Elliott Board's role in this work. So now I'm going to give you the control, Danny.
And well, Danny, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate your time today.
Zooming in. Good morning. I am Danny Norlander. I'm the Forest Climate, Carbon, and Health Analyst at the Oregon Department of Forestry. A few familiar faces in the crowd today. And I am going to do a very quick walkthrough of our climate change and carbon plan and kind of the statewide perspective about that, leaving out some of the more ODS specific things. But feel free to stop me at any time, ask questions. Pretty flexible on stuff. So with that, I will share my presentation. But then I've seen people. There you go. I can see everyone and presentation.
Yeah, we can see it.
Great. So in 2021, we developed our climate change and carbon plan. And I'll start off just with what we're going to talk about today. So background on the climate efforts at ODF and statewide, what some of the possibilities are moving forward, and how the ESRF kind of aligns with that, and what questions we think that the forest can help to answer. Not just my opinions, but like I polled around some of our other staff at ODF. So how did we get here? I've had a long history of engaging with global warming and climate change in the state. ODF and others worked starting in the 1990s with the Oregon Task Force on Global Warming report. So really started in the 80s because that came out in 1990. And then in 1997, the Climate Trust was founded, and the Forest Resource Trust was established in 1999, which was a program that still exists, but it was a way to offset energy development, and it's very windy in Salem today. Energy development through things like reforestation, afforestation, restoring underproductive forest lands. Moving into the 2000s, House Bill 2200 was passed, and that kind of established some of the base carbon stuff at ODF, including our ability to develop and sell offset credits. So this was very beginning of the carbon markets. So we still have that in statute. We've never actually gone through the rulemaking and the process to do that, but it's still there. We could still do it in the future. It also put into statute that state forests could participate and sell carbon for the benefit of the state. And then a variety of other things. Our forestry program for Oregon, it has been or was our kind of board strategic plan efforts and kind of the guiding principles behind how we were doing forestry, not just for ODF land, but basically forestry as a whole in Oregon. In 2003, it started utilizing the Montreal Protocol, Montreal process, and criterion and indicators and a variety of things there, and also started to take more interest in climate change and carbon. And then there was a Forest Biomass Working Group in 2005. The Global Warming Commission was established in 2007. It has since become the Climate Action Commission. And in 2008, we hosted a meeting for that specific to forestry, and that was kind of the first kickoffs there. 2010s move along, and we start doing more kind of statewide planning processes like the Climate Adaptation Framework. So we developed a climate change specific work plan for our Board of Forestry. And then we completed the Forest Ecosystem Carbon Report, which relies on FIA data. This is the first iteration of that to kind of have a baseline report about what carbon is available in the state. And that was followed up by our Harvest Wood Products Report and our Sawmill Energy Report. So a variety of things, and we're working on getting those updated now. Federal shutdown last year kind of slowed that down a little bit, but I think we're on track to get those back out. And moving into the 2020s, we developed the Climate Change and Carbon Plan as a response to Executive Order 2004, which I'll get into in a moment. And then in 2021, the Global Warming Commission developed its natural and working lands proposal, which included targets for sequestration increases, but didn't lay out specifics about like which sectors those were going to come from. And I think more of that is being developed as we move forward. And then, like I mentioned, we developed the Climate Change and Carbon Plan, or completed it in 2021. And then kind of the funding side of things in 2023, there was finally funding provided to do natural working land stuff. And I can talk more about that at another time if people are interested. But we are working on implementing those funds now. So Executive 2004 is kind of the most recent large thing that put us moving forward on climate change. And it really wanted agencies to center climate change in its planning and operations. This isn't just ODF, but basically all the state agencies. And then it outlined that there were reports due to the governor's office in May of 2020 when ODF submitted that. So it was looking at the specifics that we could kind of leverage that were in statute and actions that we could pursue that were within our statutory authorities at the time. So that initial report that we submitted got more feedback and comments than all of the other agencies combined. So the governor's office asked us to develop a climate change plan, and that became the Climate Change and Carbon Plan. So the purpose of that plan is to make Oregon forestry a leader in climate change mitigation and adaptation, not just ODF, but all of Oregon forestry. So it wants the department to be a leader in promoting climate smart forest practices and actions that achieve our vision by operationalizing goals, implementing actions, and measuring progress to achieve climate goals. So we kind of took that and moved into kind of what the vision for that would be. And the department and the board wanted to be national leaders in climate smart forestry. And I'll throw out to Peter climate informed forestry as well. And socially equitable forest practices. So we really kind of relied on climate smart forestry as a four-legged, three-legged stool. And I'll get more into that in a sec. But we really wanted to create climate resilient forests, watersheds, and communities, and a viable forest products industry moving into the future. We developed 4 kind of key principles. I'm not going to read all of this, but they're right there. They're also in our plan. But basically, climate change is a serious threat. BIPOC and natural resource dependent communities are traditionally more impacted. And the forest sector offers opportunities for significant sequestration, both in storage in the forest and in harvested wood products. And then our changing climate really is going to make it so that we have to do adaptive management and planning across the forest sector in the state. I think most of us know why we need a plan. We are undergoing some pretty significant climate change across the world. These are from both OCRI and the IPCC, and it just shows some of the things that we could see where we're headed and probably happening faster than is even shown on here. But really, all the models are showing we're going to get warmer. Our precipitation won't really change, but it's going to become more episodic. We're potentially going to see more droughts. We're going to see more extreme events. All of these kind of things are taking place now and expected to increase in the future. So some of the opportunities that we have in the state, Oregon's forests have amongst the highest sequestration potential on the planet. Some would say Western Oregon forests are the highest. Landowners and managers can capitalize on increasing sequestration. So that's where carbon projects come in, for example. Harvested wood products also store a substantial amount of carbon, and we have staff that are working to build up the markets and the infrastructure around longer lived harvested wood products. And then integration of climate change into our department planning processes will help inform the work of the agency. There are barriers, of course. So we identified various environmental, structural, and capacity limitations. Some of those include our statutory authorities, our public perceptions, our staffing capacity, and also biological constraints, which include things like climate change having feedback loops that make it more difficult to implement some of the strategies that we were hoping to. So what is climate smart forestry? So this is from a paper that came out in 2020. Climate smart forestry is really anchored in sustainable forest management, which was the kind of one of the core principles of our forestry program for Oregon, which has now been renamed the Vision for Oregon's Forest. But sustainable forest management was kind of the core of that. And it evolved from climate smart agriculture concepts of the early 2010s, and really started to be seen in peer-reviewed literature and stuff in 2015, 2017 timeframe, and has kind of gone up from there. So the way that we define it has kind of three main parts. It's a forest adaptation, climate mitigation, and then a social dimension that is supporting communities and the economies. So that's that four-legged, three-legged stool, because the social dimension is split into community and economy. So adaptation is basically, it requires an active measures to build resilience to the effects of climate change. So this is how the forest is adapting to climate change. This is how we're adapting ecosystems to climate change. That can be things like using different tree species or genetics, changing the structure of the forest, stand, and landscape, and utilizing a mixed management approaches, all to make a more resilient forest to climate change. That is also more adapted and will persist into the future. So we're looking at future climate, not relying on what our historic norms have been, what our historic practices have been, but what are we expected to see in the future? It will require bold steps and probably a deviation from what people have done in the past, what people have expected in the past. But as we've seen in Southern Oregon with Douglas fir mortality, for example, we're seeing a lot more mortality in our woods, both due to just drought, insects and disease pressures, and lengthening and more destructive wildfire seasons. Mitigation is really kind of leaving the trees in place until we get maximum sequestration, and then harvesting, and that likely will provide the greatest mitigation benefit. And then wood products also contribute to carbon storage. And how can we displace those higher carbon cost materials like cement, steel, plastics, and fuels, utilizing wood and wood byproducts? And then reducing emissions from the harvest and manufacturing of wood products. So how do we just decrease the embedded carbon footprint for our wood products? So the social and economic dimension is really utilizing the state's forests for traditional foods, recreation, tourism, wood fiber. It's all the ecosystem benefits that Oregonians really do expect from their forests, as well as the economic dimension. So there's a robust and historied wood products industry that supports many rural economies. So how do we continue those moving forward is all kind of embedded in that. We established 8 different forest climate action goals. So these are ones that we wanted to kind of see moving forward, and these will stay as our goals as we do iterations of this plan. So climate smart forestry, silviculture, fire management response, fire and smoke adapted communities, state forest management, forest lands, climate resilience and ecological function restoration. Our urban and community forestry program has really kind of embraced climate change and adaptation in supporting communities, doing more reforestation and afforestation, maintaining and conserving the forests that we have. And we have some board members that are very focused on that part. And then one of the parts that I'm going to focus on today is the research and monitoring. So that's kind of, to me, in my science background, that's the keystone to all of this. If we don't do the research and monitoring, we won't be able to know if the rest of the goals are being successful or not. So we need to make sure that we are doing those things. So we wanted to maintain a research and monitoring program to track the status and trends of ecological, economic, and social indicators, and the effects of climate change, to track progress related to the climate change and carbon plan. So part of that is updating the forest ecosystem carbon report. Part of that is continuing to do more research and working with researchers to kind of assess the economic side of things, the social side of things, assess how climate change is affecting our forests. So all of that is kind of key to this plan, and I think key to understand where we're going. And then we develop supporting actions that were supposed to be linked to multiple goals. And this was a little bit of outside the box and maybe didn't work as well as I was hoping because we were trying to get the department to think holistically and how different divisions can work together to achieve mutual goals for the department and the state. Some of those are linked to specific planning processes like the forest management plan for our Northwest Oregon forests, our implementation plans, our annual operating plans, as well as things like getting the various HCPs that we have in place or trying to get in place. So some of those are longer processes, some of those are shorter processes, and just depending on the time frame of those, it makes a difference. I'll just leave this up here for a minute, but we did have a number of supporting actions, and those will probably largely be reworked as we do a revision of this plan. And as I mentioned that, we are intending to start that revision process this year and hopefully have it done by the end of this year or early next year, because we put in there that we'd be accountable for doing a revision every 5 years. And the plan itself does have definitions and descriptions of all of these actions and all of the goals and pretty lengthy write-ups of them. So how does the ESRF fit? The Elliott is very productive for us. I think that just the structure of it now shows that. And the carbon project is pretty substantial in size and helps with the atmospheric carbon mitigation. So that's that mitigation leg of that three-legged stool. It provides many social benefits, as we were just talking about with the recreation side of things, and ecosystem benefits from habitat, water, clean air, etc. And then it can really help answer management questions related to climate smart forestry. So that's that research and monitoring side of things that I think is really important. And some possible questions that we think that the Elliott could really help is the feasibility of carbon projects. So as it moves forward, kind of showing where carbon projects, especially on state lands, are viable, where they benefit the most, and kind of where the niche is for them in the broader carbon market realm. And then it really can help provide us meaningful perspectives on climate smart forest management. So variability in harvest regimes, what different mixtures of species can be, what the viability is in different land allocation schemes, and then things like aquatic habitat response as climate changes in different management scenarios. So these are all things that kind of we have broad questions about moving forward, and I think that the Elliott can really help to hone in on some of that and help us understand what the implications are, especially when it comes to state lands, as well as what the recreational and social benefits will be. We have a large recreation program as well, and how that impacts us and how that can be most beneficial on public lands. And then identification of climate responses of older forests managed by the state. So it's the way that I kind of see state forests, including the Elliott. That's not ODS specific state forests, but all of the forests owned by the state it's kind of the sweet spot between shorter rotations and longer rotations that we see on either the federal side or the more industrialized side. So that was a quick run through, and I'm happy to answer questions or go more in depth on any of that.
Thank you, Danny. That was excellent. Looks like, do we have any questions right now? I think I see one from Brett.
Yeah.
Let's ask Peyton. I see your hand up. Let's go with Peyton.
First of all, Danny, thank you for that presentation. Super insightful and great information for all of us to have. I guess I have kind of two questions for you. One being, I was really surprised to see that the state of Oregon started its climate initiatives in 1990. That feels pretty ahead of the game. And you mentioned that, the state's really wanting to be a leader in this. Have you found that other states are wanting to kind of copy this model at all? Are we seeing it take off elsewhere? And then my second question was you also mentioned that you guys have talked about stand age a lot and, kind of what is the best stand age for max sequestration and storage. What are you finding that ideal age is? And I know that that varies forest to forest.
Yeah. Um, so the first question is, so other states looking to kind of do similar things is it's very dependent on kind of what their forest resource looks like. For some places, like I'll put California and Washington as examples of their cap and trade programs. They're able to put in a lot more money to do a whole lot of different things. Um, and like Washington has, like, I don't think that they've actually sold any carbon projects yet, but they've kind of put in place that they want to. Um, and then other places like Tennessee went through a whole process of analyzing their forests and the options available to them at the time and decided that it wasn't the best for them to pursue a carbon project then, but maybe they would in the future. So it is of interest to other states, and it kind of just depends on where they are, what their forest resource looks like, what their sequestration potential is, what their historic management has been. So highly variable, I would say. I think that Minnesota was working on doing a pretty sizable project, and that's mostly like hardwoods, northern hardwood type stuff. So dropped off understanding a little bit of that because I used to have lots of meetings with those people and don't as much anymore. But and then your second question there is, CMAI is kind of where we start to see a plateau, and then a lot of the modeling shows that harvest at CMAI leads to the greatest sequestration potential over the long term, just because you've maximized your sequestration of that stand. But it really comes down to some of the secondary things like what those harvested wood products go into. And we are still working on some projects related to that. And there's a paper or a project that actually is just wrapping up. And I'll actually stick it in the chat, but it was a project we were doing with American Forest on what the best carbon outcomes would be moving forward. So including climate change. So again, it depends. It depends on a lot of different factors that aren't always in our control.
Great, thank you. And I appreciate you bringing up the potential for stored carbon in wood products as well, because I believe that is often left out of this conversation. So thank you.
Thanks, Danny. Ken, and then after that, I'm going to call on Brett to ask his question.
Okay. In your previous slide, and Danny, by the way, thanks a lot. That was a great history. And let's see, there you talked about older forests. That bullet in there, and this is a little bit of follow on to Peyton's question. And you mentioned that culmination of mean annual increment is where carbon sequestration, you mentioned that. I mean, that's certainly culmination of mean annual increment is where you make the most dollars. But I think Mark Harmon's work starting back in the middle of, the middle 90s and on has shown that that cutting an old growth forest, it takes 150 years to break even on the carbon on that. And what we used to think is that old growth forests were steady state forests that were decaying and releasing carbon as quickly as they were absorbing it. But that has been shown now with canopy crane studies to not be true, and that old growth forests are continuing to capture more carbon, especially as CO2 goes up. It's easier for plants to photosynthesize, and they're capturing more carbon. So I would think a little bit more about that sort of culmination of mean annual increment as being the point where you're capturing the most carbon, because the work that Harman and others have been doing at OSU has shown that that's not the case.
Yeah, we often have conversations about that, and I think that's one of the reasons I think our work with our forest ecosystem carbon report is really key, because it can help because it's actual on the ground measurements looking at change over time and looking at, you know, all ownerships, all lands within the state, and that can help us to understand some of that. But I think the Elliott's role can also be with that. And the band dendrometers are really fun because they can show that and actually like, oh, this is really cool. So yeah, it's always evolving. And Mark always used the bucket analogy, because at some point your bucket just starts to overflow. So our forest ecologist always likes to say that one. But yeah, we pay attention to that, and we are always looking at that kind of thing. So
Thanks. Brett, do you want to ask your question that you had in the chat, please?
Sure. And Danny, thanks for being willing to present. And this is just a quick clarification, I think. So part of what we're trying to do for the board is situate the Elliott Voluntary Carbon Project within the state's larger history around carbon sequestration. And I think the specific part of the CCCP that I think there's a part within the supporting actions that calls out voluntary carbon projects as like that's part of the way. Is that right?
yeah. So we had a previous state forester that always liked to focus on the voluntary measures that the department was always taking, and working with landowners to do voluntary measures first instead of regulatory measures. And we kind of continued on with that with this, and kind of trying to help landowners understand how they can integrate with voluntary climate programs and markets, so that they can really further their own climate informed, climate smart forestry goals, and actually have the funding to be able to do that. Because that was one of the problems that was brought up, is like a lot of these take a lot of resources. Some of these things require money to actually implement. And how do you make it so that that can happen? And the voluntary markets was really kind of what we focused in on, to be in help with that. And the natural working lands funds that I mentioned out of HB 3409 from 2023, one of the projects that we're pursuing there is working with Benton Soil, Water, and Conservation District and a contractor that they have to develop a online tool basically that will help small landowners to understand how they can fit in with that, and how they can kind of aggregate with others around them to access those voluntary markets and stuff. So I'm excited for that one to get moving more and come to fruition.
Thanks, Danny. Peter.
Danny, this was really helpful, and thanks for all of your work. I have two questions. One is, when you listed possible questions, one that I thought might be in there would be looking for strategies to assess and reduce risks, particularly ecological and economic risks, and particularly focused on even-aged monoculture stands. Is that part of what you're doing? It seems like that's a risk management thing, particularly medium long-term on state lands, whether they're ODF or DSL lands. So is that part of the mix?
I think it definitely is. I think I, I mean, we could do pages and pages of questions we have. We're really good at coming up with questions, and the risk one is one that comes up often, um, for a variety of reasons, not just like a lot of the time people will start talking about risk in forests and they're thinking about wildfire and the risk of keeping forests longer because of the potential for them to burn. But there's a lot of other issues also, things like ice storms, floods, wind events that are becoming more frequent just because of climate change or more extreme because of climate change. Um, so how do you balance the risks there, and are there forest structures that make it so that you can reduce risk along with um, keeping habitat and ecosystem function? Um, so I hope that answers your question. Yes, it is of interest, and I think that it's one of many, many different questions that we have.
Okay. And the second one brings that question home to the Elliott, which is I was surprised in talking with the two OSU scientists who pushed for the triad model on the Elliott about the modeling they did to project what yields would be over time. And when I asked them, were climate change impacts a factor that was worked into that modeling, the answer was no, it wasn't. So their projections were assuming static in terms of climatic conditions. And I know that my guess is we would all agree that if we're going to have accurate modeling, that needs to be factored in. And as we go ahead with our next biannual operations plan, maybe that's an opportunity to factor that in. But it seems like for the Elliott to be productive, we need to tap into the best available science that's not just statewide, but specific to the Elliott to project, particularly on our intensive stands, how they're going to fare in the medium to long term. So is that a thing that ODF, one, your work, are you looking at that on ODF lands overall? And can ODF be a partner with the Elliott in figuring out how do we do a better job of factoring that into our modeling and projections and assumptions?
I think we would definitely be a partner. It's something that we need to do, and it's included in the climate change and carbon plans, integrating that into our state managed lands. We There's been so much modeling on for the FMP and the HCP recently, and some of it, I think, I'm not directly involved with it, but I think that some of it is considering climate variables, but probably always room for improvement there. So
Great. Thanks, Danny.
Mike.
Yeah, I think Brett was talking about a little bit ago, and maybe Danny, maybe you can help me just um, the connection between the Elliott and then this plan that you mentioned the state or ODF has done. You put that plan together, then you're watching the Elliott as kind of to see maybe to help um, educate you or learn what ideas, or I thought maybe I'd heard Brett say the Elliott, we're also looking to incorporate this into that plan that's been done already as a broader um, collaboration between the two efforts.
yeah.
Is the plan you talked about, is that a state ODF product that you're looking for state lands? And then you're watching the Elliott, or are they kind of the melding together?
Um, I mean, we don't have any direct control over the Elliott, of course, but the climate change and carbon plan was really put out as a how is ODF going to interact with climate change across all lands in the state? So whether that's like our federal forest restoration program, looking at federal lands, how are we going to support private landowners, and how are we going to work with private landowners on climate change? And also how are we going to work in our state forests on climate change? So it would help to kind of integrate things together. And I like to think of things holistically. So when the Global Warming Commission was developing their natural working lands proposal, that was taking place at the same time that we were developing this plan. So the two were kind of not necessarily married together, but at least they were looking at each other and considering the actions that were being proposed in each. And that one finished first. So then the climate change and carbon plan does reference it and references the goals that were put forward in that proposal. So it's not really, it's kind of all of the above. It's ideal that they all look to each other, and that way we're not kind of building silos. You know, we don't have the Elliott over here as one silo and ODF over here as a different silo, and counting forests off in their own. And I think that like especially with things like the carbon project, now that ODF is looking at trying to establish a carbon project on its lands, it's looking to what the Elliott has done and the process that the Elliott went through and learning the lessons from that. So it's kind of a two-way street. We can both learn from each other and really integrate, and not just try to recreate the wheel every time.
Great. Thanks, Danny. I think with the other things on the agenda, we might move on, but I just also want to say I'm really excited too to see how the research questions, the broader learning opportunities that you've identified here as it ties into the carbon project and as the whole research enterprise goes forward on this forest. I just think you've identified a lot of ways that hopefully the Elliott can also be of value in terms of bringing that learning to the broader community. So thank you. This has been terrific. I just want to echo people's thanks to you. It was really cool.
And I did put the American Forest report in the chat, a link to that. So feel free to look at that, and just came out, so it's hot off the press. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thanks so much, Danny. Have a good day. Great. So I think we are now moving on to, sorry, too many screens open. Staff and board work planning.
Oh, actually, no, I have more to
History
say on
project.
this
Great, I
topic.
forgot. Yeah, there you go. Take it away, Emma.
Are you all seeing the timeline okay?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, well, I'm going to try to be brief here. If you watched our state land board meeting, then you recognize this timeline, and I'm just going to start a little bit later since Danny covered a lot of this. In 2022 to 2023, the Elliott was decoupled from the Common School Fund, which opened us up for novel business models, including opportunities to enroll in the voluntary carbon market. In 2024, the Land Board approved the Elliott State Research Forest Management Plan, which includes carbon project development, and this came at the recommendation of the then Elliott Board. Following that, DSL entered into an agreement with ANU, and I'm going to walk us through this a bit today, but we got executive orders for Governor Kotek that look at working lands as a source of resilience in carbon and climate policy. And that brings us to now, where we are in the process of developing our carbon project. Okay. So the Elliott Forest Management Plan is grounded in the growing climate urgency in Oregon, as Danny touched on. So across the region, seeing rising temperatures, obviously, forests in the Coast Range have the need to manage landscapes for both climate adaptation and mitigation. So the Forest Management Plan reflects this urgency through several climate and carbon commitments. And participation in the voluntary market is just one of 4 primary areas. It also asks that we protect old forest habitat, implement climate smart and climate adapted forestry practices, and this can include ecological forestry demonstrations, longer harvest rotations, and management strategies that overall support enhanced carbon storage over time. And then finally, the Forest Management Plan emphasizes ongoing research and monitoring, which is central to the Elliott's role as a research forest. Okay. The FMP also outlines sort of the value that enrollment in the voluntary market can provide. So first, as we heard from Danny, yeah, it supports Oregon's broader climate and policy goals. This includes increasing recognition of natural and working lands as climate assets, as we'll see in COTEC's recent executive order. And carbon projects are just one way we can meet that. It also presents really interesting research opportunities, as we also just touched on, including carbon dynamics and flux, disturbance processes, forest economics, including how carbon projects can interact with other forest management objectives. I think participation can also inform development of future carbon market protocols, which is something we heard from partners at OSU when we were contemplating this. And then finally, voluntary carbon market participation can support the forest's long-term financial viability. Carbon revenue is part of the Elliott's diversified business model, and we hope it will sustain research management and conservation objectives moving forward. Okay, so EO 2526, I think, was released in October of November of 2025. And I included it in your packet. So enrollment in the voluntary market, along with Elliott's other carbon objectives, directly supports the goals that COTEC has outlined in this order. It directs state agencies to coordinate efforts to reduce climate impacts and help Oregon's lands and waters adapt to a changing climate while continuing to support states' health, environment, and economy. In terms of the Elliott, these mandates include conserving natural and working lands as resilience anchors, keeping working lands working, fostering community resilience, and doing all of this with transparency and accountability. So if you watched our presentation to the Land Board in February, DSL is responding to this executive order across a number of different programs. The Elliott Carbon Project is one of that portfolio. So in this context, the Elliott's work on carbon sequestration, climate smart forestry, and voluntary carbon market participation helps advance broader climate resilience framework outlined in this order. And Elliott is actually called out specifically. First, the order emphasizes enhancing direct climate resilience as a co-benefit of forest management and asks that we consider climate resilience in our forest management plans. So that will be a consideration when we update our current FMP. The order also calls for agencies to explicitly consider present and future climate impacts in planning management decisions, which I guess is what I just said. And then it encourages the use of innovative mitigation tools and market-based approaches, which would include mechanisms like the voluntary carbon market. Okay, so for our existing direction, our forest management plan directs that we develop a project on the voluntary carbon market and sets carbon revenue as a foundational source within the Elliott's business model. So it's been envisioned as a component of our diversified business model towards self-sufficiency since before the adoption of our FMP in 2024. It emerged through earlier processes, including the advisory committee discussions and legislative action in 2022 under Senate Bill 1546. So this policy direction to pursue a carbon project has already been established under the former board's recommendation to approve the FMP and the subsequent approval by the State Land Board. However, this FMP does not determine the specific design of the carbon project, and elements that will take shape as the project develops include the quality and quantity of credits generated, how credits are marketed and sold, and expected revenue levels, and how those revenue may be allocated across our mission and policy goals. So that brings me to where we see your oversight in this area. This slide represents where we are in the carbon market development process. We're just about to wrap up inventory and move into stratification. So many of the upcoming steps involve technical work that are required under our protocol and American Carbon Registry standards. As you know, we have contracted with Anu, who's our carbon market developer, and they have expertise in accounting on the voluntary carbon market. And as you know, if you've read our oversight structure, you have some oversight in this area, including financial responsibilities, policy outcomes related to carbon sequestration, and public accountability. So, this carbon project is really innovative work. It'll be one of the first under the 2.1 protocol and also one of the first on public lands. And it's unique that we have this public board here providing advisory capacity. So we want to make sure that the board has meaningful opportunities to provide guidance as the project develops. The oversight structure does indicate that DSL will seek board recommendation regarding the sale of carbon credits. The board has already provided this recommendation through the approval of the forest management plan, which directs development of a voluntary project. But as this development proceeds, we're considering additional points where board guidance may be helpful. This could include project readiness for verification after Anu completes the technical analysis and credit quantification. I see your hand, Keith, but I'm going to keep going. As well as future allocation of carbon revenue in alignment with the forest mission and management policies, which we would anticipate in spring 2027 in conjunction with that BOP approval that will happen in April of 2027. So, because this is new territory, the points where board guidance is most useful may evolve as we learn more and work our way through the process. So our goal here is to keep the board informed and involved and ensure that we do not ask the board to make recommendations in the abstract, but that you are clear on what we are asking of you and that you're clear on where we are in the process. So that's where this learning plan comes in. So your discussion is informed as the project progresses. So it's really kind of a co-learning opportunity. You're learning along with us as we move through the process. So today is the first step in that. I think it gets us all up to speed on what our history and policy context is. For future board learning plan discussions, we have items planned around the American Carbon Registry improved forest management protocol that we have agreed to follow. We'd also like to hear from other public forests on their lessons learned from carbon projects, and that could be the state of Michigan, Washington DNR, and other more local entities. And then how this project in particular is approaching additionality, permanence, and risk mitigation, which is related to the 2.1 protocol that we're following. So we want this learning plan to be transparent and responsive to your needs. And I understand that for those of you that carbon projects are new, it may not be clear what you need to know to make a decision. So feel free to be open about that. But we'll just keep posing the question of what elements do you believe are most important to the development of a strong project, and what information would you need to know to move forward in this process as our guides. Okay, Keith, let's hear it.
Thanks, Emma. Hey,
Yeah.
that's great. Is there an estimate, or do you guys have a timeline on when Anu will know and we can get a handle on estimated revenues off the forest in terms of carbon?
Darren, do you have an answer for that? I couldn't say with full confidence.
I'll take a stab at it. I can't give you an exact date, but a lot of that's dependent on, of course, they're doing the finishing up the inventory now. As Emma kind of showed kind of in the timeline there, there's some other steps they obviously need to do some calculations, and then there's a third party verification of those numbers to make sure that they're accurate. And it'll be, sometime at that point where we'll have a more firm idea of how many credits there'd be, and then you could probably be able to have more of an answer about that when that happens, Keith, because at this point they're still kind of doing that collection and verification and modeling process to tell us that. So that we'd have, numbers that are better than just kind of speculation.
Yeah, that would be great, Darren. Thanks. Is there even can Anu even tell us, is that 3 months out, 6 months out, 12 months out before we have any of those numbers? I think I'd like to know. I'd like us to have a sense of what that timeline looks at, and to be able to answer that question to folks that bring it up.
And that's something I can clarify because part of what they're doing in these, see all these steps here, but some of them are not necessarily, some of them will happen concurrently, some can happen at the same time. And so obviously we're still on track for the, credit issuance in that late, the end of 2027 timeframe. And so obviously we'll have some of that data sooner than that, but that's a question I can follow up with them and kind of see if they can give kind of what are they thinking about where we would have that at. And I'm happy to, share that back with the board.
Yeah, good question, Keith. And it seems like it also ties into the financial plan timeline and development. So that would be useful information to have. Mike?
Yeah, Jen, and that was part of my thought. Sorry about that, Mike, in that when you guys presented, Darren, when you guys were at the presenting on the Hill, or on the Hill in the Capitol the other last month, that those were, you guys had estimates of low estimates in terms of value of the forest and high estimates, and all those were dependent on variables. And clearly this is a very important variable, so that the sooner we're in the loop, the better, or the sooner we're in the ballpark, the better, knowing we can't nail it down. Thanks. And Mike, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry before I jump in real quick again, Mike. So just looking back through here, looks like the last we heard from Anu would be November would be when we would probably have that information that you're talking about, Keith. So if that changes, of course, we'll let the board know, but that's looking back here, that's the estimate of that. So
Great. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, just to kind of tag on to what Keith is talking about. Am I echoing?
Yeah, a little bit.
Anyway, so in addition to what the credits might bring, it would be handy to know what costs that we're going to be committing to down the road too, for future verification, all those sort of things that go along with the carbon credit sales.
If you can mute yourself, Mike, I think we heard your question. So yeah, that's our comment. It's a good addition there. Yeah. Keith, are you off again or no? Okay.
I was just going to tell Mike that was a cool special effect. When I was in college, that would have blown us all away. So.
All right. Did you have, Emma, did you have others there? And I just want to pause and make sure. This is really valuable time spent, I think, bringing us all up to speed and giving a chance for people to have these questions. So I just want to check and see if anybody else, and we won't, just looking at the agenda and the timeline, I hope we don't need 20 minutes for the board protocol. If we do, I'm going to be very grumpy. So heads up. So I don't think we'll need 20 minutes for that. So we'll keep rolling with these discussion items, which are, I think, a very important and meaty part of the meeting. So does anybody else have anything on the carbon piece?
Emma, I had a quick question. Super job at doing that. Throughout this conversation, there's been the question of what impact might the carbon agreement have on the future of research on the forest. Is there any way to kind of know where we are in that, and how, particularly by the time it gets to an approval process, to have a clearer answer of how it might influence future research?
It's my understanding that there were earlier meetings with OSU about the impact to future research in the triad specifically, and that OSU's carbon person didn't find issue with that. That's secondhand information. I think the triad power analysis that Ryan's leading will give us more information on that. So more information to come. But if Darren or Brett has more nuance to that, feel free to step in.
Okay, I don't see any other comments. All
Yeah,
right.
Emma, sorry,
Go ahead,
Jennifer.
Brett.
This is Brett. Yeah, it's a concern that OSU had raised and that we vetted through the past process of would enrolling the entire forest provide or produce constraints that would restrict the triad design. And it's one where we wrestled it to the ground, and by enrolling the whole forest, there's actually more flexibility. So the sense is no, it wouldn't constrain research, but this is all in the caveat of knowing that Elliott staff and board are still working through what the evolution of the triad design is. So I think the idea around the project was it's a research forest, so provide the flexibility and clear connection between a carbon project and the research. So allow flexibility for the space. But the research framework is obviously something that folks are still working on.
Great. Thanks, Brett. I think I'm going to keep us rolling here. I know a couple of board members may need to duck off a little early. So in the interest of that and time, and so good work on the carbon piece. Thank you, Emma, very much for that, and Danny. So the next piece is staff and board work planning. And so we're hoping to have a board work plan so that the board can sort of see how topics are coming up and how we intersect with the efforts and priorities on the forest, and to really make the board as useful as possible to the forest and to the staff. And so we really want to build something like that on and inform it with and make sure it's aligned closely with the work and the priorities and the timelines for the staff on the forest. And so today, Darren's going to provide an update on what the staff work planning process is and share some ideas about some of the topics coming up over the next while on the board's radar. So Darren, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Jennifer. So yeah, this kind of goes to the kind of my opening comments and alluding to some of the other process we've been working on. And this is one of those key things that we've realized that it's good, obviously, to give the board as much notice as possible about what's coming at you guys that we're going to bring in front of you to, have some advance notice on. And so, and also just part of as staff is trying to wrap their head around all the work that is in front of all of them on the different aspects of the research forest. They've been, putting their heads, pens to paper and kind of mapping out what were their the large projects that they have to work that are coming up over the next year here or longer if we can, start projecting some of that stuff out and then look at as part of that, they're also then trying to break those down into what's the action plan pieces of, what are the parts of that to then go into getting those projects done. And so had a good exercise with that with staff and have some things sketched out, and so I'll offer apologies here. My plan was to have this other document in time for get into the packet, which it didn't make it. So this is one of those things I'll share with the board as a separate update item here so we can look at it. Because I was thinking about throwing someone into a slide, but it's like it'll make it kind of hard to look at if I tried to squeeze it into a slide. So I'll just talk a little bit of kind of what this will look like, and then I'll send this out for you guys to look at. So what we did is take those work plans from staff and then turn it into a kind of a board meeting plan schedule of what topics would be coming up for the next board meetings, and we have that planned out now based on the input I got pretty much through the end of the year and maybe into the first part of next year's board meetings. And so we'll continue to try to work that out even further. But I thought it was important that we at least have the next meetings in the next year within the year planned out ahead of us. And so it's set up with I'll just describe it real quickly. kind of what I mentioned before about kind of how we want to, and I'll use the recreation planning as an example. So as you heard me today and kind of be in that kind of general updates category where it was other staff giving updates on their projects, but then also that can be an opportunity to key up topics like I did with the recreation planning to say, hey, this is next on the, we're going to get this rolling. I want to get this back on your radar. Here's some initial little thoughts about it. Gauge board interest on if there's certain people want to dig in. Then the next part of that being then items that are discussion items. And so, as I mentioned, the plan would be for the rec planning would be this is a discussion item for the May meeting. And then where we would go a deeper dive into the topic, have more discussion, or I'd have a little more of a presentation on what things look like, what I'm thinking of for planning, and then have time for board discussion during that meeting. And then the other category on this plan is those items that are meant to be where they're action items. So especially if action items, then for the board, if that's one of those spots where it's one of the many things that are called out in the oversight structure that are where we look to the board for recommendations, where we having those planned out on that schedule as well. So I do have that put together. I've got a pretty good draft. I'm probably always going to call it a draft because it's always going to, it'll be as firm as it can, but obviously things will shift. Um, timelines might, change when we have something else that comes up that's more of a priority that we weren't expecting that we have to shift into the time schedule. And so it's meant to be a little bit flexible, but it should give the board a pretty good idea about what's coming up next. And so my intention is to also send this out with, that other item I talked about earlier with the recreation planning, send this out for the board. Um, and Jennifer, I don't know if you prefer to just have that go to you and Haley as the co-chairs take a quick look at first, or I'm happy to send it to the whole board. And then as we would normally do, then if individual board members want to reach out to comment to me about anything that they see or something that's, hey, what about this topic? I don't see this on here, and that they think it might need to be something more timely, that I could accept that kind of comment. So
you can pass it by Haley and me just to see if we have any questions that would be helpful before you send it out to the full board. But yeah, that would be great. And getting it to the full board soon is a priority. So we would be expeditious in our feedback. So thanks. Yeah, that'd be great.
Great. Yeah. So then I'll plan on just getting that to you guys here the next, probably could just send it out to you tomorrow. And then, yeah, if you guys could take a look at it, and then I'm happy to send it out as part of one of my other little batch of updates before I'll do that. Not wait till the next board meeting, obviously get that out here as a separate email out to the board to share. So, any questions or feedback or thought on that from anybody at this point, or if not, pretty straightforward idea to get us all, to help to get us all to be, know what's coming at us, know where we want to have deeper conversations, and give people notice to wrap their brains around topics instead of coming and springing stuff on you. We want to make sure we're not doing that.
Great. Sounds good, Darren. All right, I don't see any questions on that. So all right, so yeah, send it to us, and then we'll make sure Darren will make sure it gets out to all of you to give us a sense of the roadmap ahead. And sounds good. All right. Let's move on then to, I think, board experience and skills. And I believe that Emma was going to tee this one up.
Yeah, so as you all know, you are appointed by the State Land Board. We are accepting applications year-round for board members. Those applications are reviewed by a recruitment committee, which is the chair, vice chair, and then members of DSL staff. We then provide input based on this review to the DSL director level. So this October, director level will recommend candidates to the State Land Board for consideration. We want to note for this year, the appointment process and timeline may evolve as we continue through consultation. So the board consists of 7 or 9 voting members with staggered terms to maintain continuity while creating regular opportunities to bring in new perspectives. Board members will serve 2 consecutive 4-year terms, or can serve 2 consecutive 4-year terms, and initial members may serve a 3rd term depending on their original appointment length. So, considering the work items Darren just mentioned and what you know of our work moving forward, we want to know from you what skills and experience you think will be most valuable to the board to support our work ahead. And the responses you provide in this meeting, or you can follow up with me over email, would be included in our workday posting for recruitment for Elliott board positions.
Thanks, Emma. So that was a question that people can respond to now, or as Emma mentioned, if you have thoughts and you want to email her, but I'll just give folks a moment to think about that question and see if there are any things top of mind for people that you want to share right now.
Emma, you have something posted online, right? As far as
Yeah.
recruitment and kind of
Yeah, we
the
have a perennial workday posting that I think lists like 10 or 12 different desired skills. So anything from like forestry experience to conservation finance. But we can be more or less specific.
is that recruitment been um has that worked to date, do you think? I mean, are you getting more applicants? I mean, I
Um,
asked that question, but I think it's worked good. I think it's worked good looking at the current board members. I think you recruited well, but I know you have a couple seats or a seat. So are you getting a good pool?
um, I don't believe we have currently any applicants. But that said, our comms plan for recruitment process doesn't begin, I think, until spring for us to push out to different interest groups and through the Elliott channels.
And the deadline is May 31st, is that correct? Or
The deadline for you all, I believe, is May 31st, and that should be the case for the general public as well. So for those seeking reappointment, we ask that you get your application materials in by May 31st. I think that's true for the public. Yeah.
maybe we can also email out a link to the workday thing again so people can see it. If they're reflecting after.
Yeah, the workday posting was included in your board packet.
Thought it was. I was looking for it.
But I can send it out over email as well. And I'm happy to share more information on the recruitment process, but right now we're just interested in what skills and experience should we be looking for as we move into this next appointment process. Okay, well, maybe folks can think on it and get back to me.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I may have overlooked it. I didn't see it in there, but it may be in there. Sometimes I go through those PDFs too fast.
So I included it in your board member bios and term lengths. It was linked in there. Yeah, so it's easy to overlook. Yeah. It's just a link to it. It isn't the posting itself.
Thanks. Okay. So please do send Emma any thoughts you have on that front, so we can make sure that they are reflected when we begin to push out that recruitment process further. Okay, so I think the next bit is hold on, going too many screens here. I was scrolling through that board packet and I lost my agenda. Oh, so prompt me here, Emma.
We're on budget and financial planning, so I think it goes back to Darren.
There you go, budget and financial planning.
Yep, I'm up again for the last discussion topic. So this relates to, so I have a little bit of the timeline for the 27-29 budget and financial planning here on this slide, but this also relates to the document that I sent out with the last board update. That was the kind of the integrated financial planning and budget timeline couple pager that I sent out. So this has some of those details. I'll just touch on this. the document that you got goes a little bit further out than this, but I just want to touch on a couple of things here, and then on the next slide we'll also do the feedback about the financial plan outline document. But I just want to point out a couple of things here of note is that we're planning to have some budget and financial planning work groups for the board in April to have that opportunity to talk more about board members' thoughts on how we would prioritize, service and delivery area allocations within what the budget would be for the Elliott for 27-29. And we also thought some of our discussions too is thought that as part of that would be a good for board members, because I know y'all come from a little different backgrounds of experiences with state government and how the state government budget process works. And so we thought that maybe having a bit of a primer on how that process works as part of those work groups might be useful, just to get everybody on the same baseline about how things work and how we try to align with that process. And so that's another part of that. So I just want to point that out. Then from having those work group sessions, we would then this would be another item for the May board meeting, would be reviewing the outcomes from those work group sessions as a discussion item with the full board. So yeah, I won't read all the rest of these to you. And then there's, like I said, there's a little bit more detail in the document that I sent. So I think with the time, if we can bump to the next slide and move to the questions from the financial plan outline. So I just wanted to make sure we had some time if anyone wanted to give some live feedback to these questions that I had posed when I can't remember how long ago I sent that out, what date it was that I had sent that, shared with the financial plan outline with the board. And then along with that, had asked some questions. I know, Jennifer, thank you for sending out a more recent prompt again to the board members about what these questions for just to spur any other thoughts you might have had about after you've taken a look at that. The questions we had here is like, do the subject areas that we had in there, board members find it, are there any, though the subject areas capture what the board thinks are important in a financial analysis, are there things missing? Are there potential revenue areas missing? And are there key additional entities we might want to engage with regarding the forest financial feature? And so, I don't know if anyone open that up for anyone to have any feedback they want to give now on that, or
Yeah, let's see. I mean, it's people that might have questions or comments
feedback on
now,
that.
and then do feel free, if you don't share to anything today, if you do have feedback on these specific questions, to get back to Darren on them promptly, please. Any comments, questions, feedback, responses to these prompting questions would like to share right now? Haley.
This was just a general note, which I'm sure you guys are considering in this, but in some of the current and new or future potential funding sources, a lot of that is going to rely on significant capacity to chase down those funding sources, to research those funding sources, and to have strong partnerships that are going to enable you to be successful in those. And so was just kind of a note of like, this is really helpful, but we certainly need to think about it in terms of what our staffing capacity is to support pursuing and managing that type of diverse portfolio. So it wasn't, an element on there, but it made me curious if maybe we should actually kind of memorialize the capacity piece to, again, seek and manage a portfolio that diverse.
Noted. Thanks, Haley.
Yep, good comment. Mike, and then Ken.
Yeah, thank you. I think Mike Kennedy was mentioning earlier about the carbon credits and just making sure we talk about different revenue sources, but making sure we have all the costs identified in managing the forest. We're talking about selling carbon credits. What is the cost for maintaining this, the inventory and the monitoring for those? And somewhat related, like the earlier presentation, talking about the HCP and the different studies that are going on as far as species out there, and the HCP as far as, are those costs, and Shutter Creek, um, and then some um, inflation number that's factored in there too. So anticipate that those costs will go up. And also, I guess also research, of course, the anticipated needs for that as we hopefully broaden that out in the future. So yeah, I think just making sure we detail that part out really well.
Great, important point. Mike, Ken.
Yeah, potential revenue areas missing. And we've been talking about, standing carbon here, and that's what ANU is going to be developing an inventory on. And, to follow up on, Mike's just comment a moment ago, as we harvest, we're taking a certain amount of carbon out. To Haley's point, yes, some of that's being sequestered in forest products and so on. And so all of that will be, is being worked out presumably by ANU right now. But the missing carbon piece is biochar, and that is when you've heard me say this before. When you char wood, it becomes very long lasting, centuries. And that brings a much higher price. And ANU has a discussion of biochar on their webpage. And what I'd like to be able to do, and working with Ryan and Darren and other folks, is to be able to contact ANU and say, what data do you need in order for us to be able to add biochar as a revenue source? Because I think I've mentioned this before, that biochar brings in probably 10 times the dollars that sequestered carbon in trees does. And so to be able to develop a research proposal to be able to fill in whatever missing numbers that ANU needs. And so I guess I'm saying that's a potential revenue area that's missing. And the solution to that is a research project. And I'm willing to put together a research proposal, but I also want to be able to talk to ANU, and Ryan, and I'm not, I don't want to run off on my own here. I want to bring everybody along with me, but that have a discussion with ANU ahead of time to say, this is what we're thinking about. These are the data that we think you need. You tell us what you need, and we'll see if we can provide that. So that's my comment on missing revenue.
Great, thanks, Ken. Any other suggestions or comments, things that you want to flag today to be kept in mind as we continue to develop this financial plan? These are good inputs and helpful as we go forward. I don't see any other hands up, but if anyone here, either who has shared some ideas or who has not, would like to send any follow-ups to Darren on this, that's great. So thanks, Darren. Thanks for teeing it up for us, and thanks for sending that outline.
And just one more thing before we move on real quick, just so another heads up here for on the financial plan is, so on that schedule that we put also for mid-March for the board to see the draft sections 1 through 3 of the plan, so beyond the outline in the first 3 sections. And so just wanted to also give you a heads up on that. That's you're going to be coming your way. We look like we're on schedule for that to still stay to that mid-March. So look to probably by the end of next week that to come your way as well, to see a bit more of that for board review. So just wanted to get that on your awareness and radar as well. So
great.
Thank you.
Thanks. Keep your eyes out for that, folks. All right. Thanks, Darren. All right. If I'm missing anybody, holler, just go off mute, but I think we'll move on. We do have one action item today, which was the approval of the board operating protocols, which we had sent out. Thanks for those of you who sent comments. We did our best to incorporate them you've all seen it multiple times. So I just want to pause here if anyone had any further questions. I did get, Peter gave me a thumbs up before he had to sign off on this. And if one thing we are looking for here is a motion to approve these. So maybe I'll just start with that if we have a motion, and then I'll pause and see if there's any further discussion. So do we have a motion to approve the board operating protocols, a draft of which was in your packet?
Mike Kennedy, I'll make a motion to approve the board operating protocols.
Thank you, Mike. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Now, is there any further discussion that anyone would like to have today on these? And I do appreciate the input we received.
Yeah, just a
Yep, Mike.
clarification. I know I've looked them over quite a bit before, but I haven't been able to refresh myself. Has there been any? I don't think there's been any real substantial changes or anything, right?
No, we were just
Edits.
trying to incorporate, people's any comments they had, and I think the motion that we would, might also add that these are things that can be revised over time if we realize that there's something that we really would benefit from having in them that we don't have right now. So we would be approving them as they are now, but also they can be added to or improved over time. So no major changes that I can think of. Haley, was there anything major that I'm forgetting?
No, I think we talked briefly in our last meeting about some of the some further delineation on the chair vice chair role and the onboarding. And then as Jennifer mentioned, we got really good participation from you all in reviewing this document. And so everything that we received, Jennifer took time and updated. So that version that was sent out to you reflected all the comments received to date.
Thank you.
And if I did miss any, just send me an email and we will make sure that we circle back on that. All right. Any other discussion or comment? Thanks for that, Mike. All right. If not, let's say all those in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Right. Any opposed? And feel free to come off mute and say you're opposed because I may not see you doing something like a thumbs down. All right, it looks like we have approved these. And once again, if people realize there is a way to improve them further in the future, we will certainly circle back. So next, I think we're sort of doing a recap and next steps a bit here. So the action item we did just approve was the board operating protocols. So just that it's going to be any follow-ups, responsible parties, draft agenda topics for next meeting, which we have touched on throughout the day a few times, and then a reminder of next meeting date, which I'll cover right now, which I believe is May 13th. Things to recap here, Emma, in terms of other recommendations. Oh, Haley, sorry.
The only other thing I noted was that Darren is going to get out that work plan information as related to the board, and that he'll get that to Jennifer and I. It sounded like potentially tomorrow, but by end of week. Jennifer and I will very quickly review, as we're hoping to have that to you already. So we'll ensure you guys get it ASAP, and would also similarly appreciate your kind of review and feedback on that so we can ensure we're all aligned moving forward.
Great. And also to keep an eye out for the financial plan piece that Darren just mentioned at the conclusion of that last. He will be sending that out shortly as well. Thanks for that, Haley.
I can read off the additional action items Hannah and I collected.
Great, that'd be awesome. Thanks, Emma.
Okay, so Ryan Baumbush will check in with researchers if they've found additional funding for these specific studies. Ryan will share his research model work plan timeline. Darren will send his work plan to Haley and Jennifer tomorrow. And then board members will send valuable skills and experience for potential board members to me. I think before the next board meeting for that one.
And board topics for next time too. We had the recreation and education piece update. We might have something on the decision-based tribal consultation, possibly? Or were there other topics that I know we touched on a few more in the course of today for me. Touching base again on the financial plan as laid out in the slide that Darren shared.
Yeah, I think we might be able to have a more tangible conversation about this after you receive that work plan update from Darren. So Jennifer, maybe you and I can follow up with the board after we get that piece out.
Good idea. All right. Anything else? I think there's still a possibility. I don't know that we have confirmed it yet, but it's a possibility that the meeting in May may be in person. So if that is a decision that we make, we want to make sure that decision gets made in a timely manner so the board knows. So that's a possibility, correct? And we will follow up on more specifics about that board meeting on May 13th. Anything else? Caitlin?
I have a go back.
Just go ahead on the maps. Yeah.
Yeah, on Haley's question on whether those harvest units are available to the public, I just wanted to clarify that we do have all of the harvest units that are going to be offered for sale in this biennium are part of the biennial operations plan. So on our website, there's Appendix A under our approved plan, and that includes all the maps of the sale units or projects. And the township range and section are on all of those maps. So those are the locations of where all of the sale units will be. The thing that's missing is the name of the sale units and the configuration and schedule. So I just wanted to clarify that all project units are available to the public.
Thanks for following up on that. I think it's really helpful. I think if there's a way, since as we do start to name potential sales, I'm speaking from a point of just trying to make sure that we're being as transparent as humanly possible with the public, especially as we enter into operations. And so I think anything we can do to increase public transparency and kind of ease of digesting that information that is in the appendix would be really helpful now that we are kicking off with sales.
Thanks, Haley.
Yes, thank you for that, Caitlin. All right. Anything else for the good of the order? Feel free to remind me of things that I've forgotten here. All right. If not, I just want to thank everybody for your participation. I want to thank the staff for putting together so many informative and useful and educational and engaging topics today. So thanks for all the heavy lift that you guys put into that. I think it was super helpful. It certainly was helpful for me. And I just really want to acknowledge and thank everyone for the time that they put into this and for your engagement today on the board as well. So I will, I guess, call this meeting adjourned and look forward to all the follow-up and hope everybody stays safe and as dry as possible as this atmospheric river comes our way.